Her husband threw her out the same night she told him she was pregnant. No apology, no explanation, just one brutal sentence: that baby is mine. Olivia slept in her car, terrified, broke, and completely alone. Then her phone rang. A lawyer told her that her first husband, a man she hadn't seen in nearly a decade, had died and left her a fortune. But there was a condition, and suddenly everything Liam had done began to make sense. The strange questions, the missing money, the sudden cruelty. He hadn't rejected her because of the inheritance.
First thing my husband said when I told him I was pregnant was, "This asset is underperforming." Then he cut me off. It only made sense later, when I was sleeping in my car. He wasn't just ending our marriage, he was executing a hostile takeover of my entire life. And he'd been planning it for a long time. My name is Amelia, and thanks for being here. Please subscribe and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what city you're from. I love seeing how far my story travels. People always say you can sense when a relationship is dying. They mention the growing silence, the space between you in bed, the day he stops asking how you are. But when you're living it, you find reasons for the quiet. You tell yourself it's just pressure from a bad product launch. You call it exhaustion. You say it's just a dip in the stock price. I told myself all of those lies, and they nearly broke me. But in a strange way, that crisis helped me find a part of myself I thought was gone for good. I am Amelia Hayes, and for 7 years, I was married to Julian Croft. We lived in a gorgeous historic brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill, the kind of place you see in architecture magazines. We had the right friends and threw the right parties. I'm an architect. Julian is a tech CEO. On paper, we were the ultimate power couple. Were that couple people envied, always whispering. They really have it all. But paper never tells the full story. Looking back, the first crack showed up about a year before it all came crashing down. Julian started taking these latter night investor calls on a second work phone he kept in his briefcase. I found him with his back to me once, and he ended the call so quickly he nearly dropped it. He just smiled and said it was a sensitive acquisition. A confidential work issue, he told me, then kissed my forehead, and I was foolish enough to believe him. Our money started to feel strange. Julian always managed our finances. He was the expert, after all. I gave him total control. Soon he was diversifying our assets, moving my architectural firm's profits into a new trust that only he had access to. He'd show me these impressive-looking spreadsheets that were intentionally confusing. It was all for our future, he'd promise. At the same time, he began making odd comments about loyalty, asking me weird hypotheticals. "What do you think is the biggest betrayal of trust?" he would ask. Leo Vance was my first husband. We got married very young. I was 21, he was 24, and we separated after 2 years. It was friendly, a simple agreement that we were headed in different directions. No drama, no huge arguments. He moved to Chicago to become a journalist, and we just fell out of touch. I hadn't heard from Leo in almost 10 years. So when he discovered a $75,000 charge for a necklace from a private jeweler, I felt a sudden chill. When I confronted him, he said I was being dramatic. It was a corporate gift for a key partner, a business expense. I decided he was just stressed. I wondered if my own career success was making him feel insecure. I convinced myself we'd get through it, and I tried to let it go. I was 9 weeks pregnant when my world completely shattered. I had taken 3 tests at home before my doctor's office called with the official news. I was ecstatic and a little scared. It wasn't exactly planned, but we both knew it was the next step. I truly thought Julian and I were ready to start a family. I got home that night with a little gift box, Inside was a tiny custom-made silver square and our first ultrasound photo. I can recall every single detail of what happened next. Julian opened the box. He saw the little square. He looked at the ultrasound picture. Then he placed them both on the kitchen island with the slow, deliberate calm of a man sunsetting a failed product. He looked right at me, his eyes totally blank, and said the 8 words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. "We are sunsetting this partnership, effective immediately." I laughed. I actually let out this short, shocked laugh, because it had to be some kind of awful joke, a twisted, horrible joke. But his face was like granite. He said it again. "He accused me of carrying on an affair for months," he said. "He wanted me out of his house by morning. When I tried to speak to him, to reach for his arm, he pulled away like I was toxic. By midnight, I was on a parking garage rooftop, the gift box on the passenger seat, trying to process how my life had just been utterly destroyed. Just sat for hours with the engine off, asking myself the same question over and over. What kind of man, after 7 years together, finds out his wife is pregnant and immediately decides the baby can't possibly be his? I had no answer, but a cold, logical part of my mind was already putting the pieces together. I spent the entire night in my car. It's not like the movies, where there's a big dramatic scene. I just sat there, the damp Boston wind swirling around the car, a cold that seeps deep into your bones. I was too stunned to feel anything but a profound, hollow ache. I just stayed there. The city lights glowed across the river. I watched headlights cross the bridge, a perfectly normal Tuesday night for the rest of the world. But I felt like I was on a different planet. Around 2 a.m., I took stock of my situation. I had a few $100s in cash. Every other dollar I'd ever made was in that trust Julian controlled. My laptop was in that house, my blueprints, my client contracts. My whole business was on a cloud server tied to his company. My health insurance was through Julian's company. I was 9 weeks pregnant, uninsured, with no access to my own money, and locked out of my home. And that's when I realized I was holding the one piece of the puzzle. Julian was certain I'd never figure out. The thought struck me with a sudden icy clarity. That expensive necklace. It wasn't a corporate gift. Julian wasn't a man driven by jealousy. He was a CEO. He didn't make decisions based on emotion. He made them based on data. His entire career was about identifying a bad investment and cutting it loose before it did any more damage. The accusation had nothing to do with my behavior. It was a strategic first strike. He was projecting his own actions onto me. The only reason to accuse your pregnant wife of cheating is if you're the one who is hiding something. I grabbed my phone and remembered the shared family tablet he'd forgotten to wipe. I logged into his email and found a folder labelled Back Bay Condo. Inside were floor plans for a new penthouse, invoices for furniture idea specified for clients. And in a subfolder called Personal, there was Julian with his arm around another woman, and around her neck was the exact necklace from the invoice. What did Julian know that I was missing? And how long had he known it? I didn't sleep at all. Around 5 in the morning, I walked into a 24-hour diner near the harbour and ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I just sat in the booth, my mind racing. By sunrise, I had the beginnings of a plan. First, I had to get back inside that house to retrieve my things, my passport, my personal records, my laptop, and access to the server with all my architectural work. That was all mine. Julian couldn't legally keep it, but I had a feeling he'd try to. Second, I needed to contact a lawyer before I did another thing. Not just any lawyer either. I needed someone who specialized in complex financial assets, who could tell me my rights to that trust, and if Julian could legally throw me out of our marital home. I was fairly sure he couldn't. I had to know for sure. Third, I had to call my doctor. I was 9 weeks pregnant without any health insurance. I needed medical advice immediately. And fourth, the part that felt both scary and essential, I needed to figure out why Julian was so suddenly obsessed with Leo Vance. Because if Julian had been researching my ex-husband, then this accusation wasn't some spontaneous fit of rage. It was a calculated strategy. Why would any man invent a reason to throw his pregnant wife out on the street? The answer was chilling, but it made a cold, terrifying kind of sense. Because he needed his wife gone before an event occurred that would give her a permanent claim on something he wanted all for himself. I held the cold mug in my hands. I was not an idiot. I built my career on seeing how structure, materials, and space come together, and I could see the blueprint of his betrayal. Julian saw a massive win coming, something tied to this other woman, and he was trying to cut his losses before a merger. The baby just made him accelerate his timeline. That had to be it. But he made one critical error. He moved too quickly, too brutally. A man with a flawless plan doesn't just invent an affair and change the locks overnight. He got scared, and a panicked escape always leaves a trail. I left $5 on the table, pulled on my jacket, and walked out into the crisp Boston air, feeling something I never expected, focused. Not good, not even a little bit safe, but focused. Like an architect who finally sees the finished structure in her mind. I could finally see the whole design. I knew what was structural and what was just for show. In my car, I pulled up the contact for Ms. Albright, a total shark of a family lawyer I'd met at a fundraiser. I had her personal cell because she once considered hiring my firm for her new offices. It was barely 7 a.m., but I sent the text Albright, "It's Maya Bance. I have to see you today. It's an urgent personal matter. I'm so sorry for the early text." Her reply came in under 5 minutes. "I'll move my 9. Be here at 8:30. I took a deep breath. The plan was just a sketch, but every great design starts with a blank page. Ms. Albright's office was a historic brownstone on Beacon Hill, the kind of world I designed for clients, but never felt I belonged in. Her assistant led me into a library filled with books that smelled of old leather and wealth. I was wearing clothes from the day before. I hadn't slept. ID even bought a new shirt from a pharmacy just to feel human. MS Albright walked in at 9 sharp, put a single folder on the desk, and just looked at me with eyes that missed nothing. "Start from the beginning," she said. "Don't leave a single thing out." So I told her everything. Took notes on a yellow legal pad, just letting me talk until the whole horrible story came out. When I was finally done, she capped her pen.
"Okay, let's put out the biggest fires first,"
she said. "The house is in both of your names." It was. He can't legally change the locks. That's a textbook illegal eviction. Well filed to get you back in. Now, your joint bank accounts. Has he touched the money since last night? I had no idea. "Check now," she ordered, sliding her laptop to me. I logged on. $650. 2 days ago, it held over 90,000. I pushed the laptop away. My hand was strangely steady. "He took it all last night," I said. Miss Albright's expression didn't change, but she resumed writing. "Show me the transaction log." I did. 2 massive wire transfers, both sent around 2 a.m. after he kicked me out, to a holding company I had never seen before. That is dissipation of marital assets, she said flatly. It's more than enough for an emergency court order to freeze everything he has. How long have you been married? 6 years. Always here in Massachusetts? Yes, good. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state. He doesn't just get to steal the family fortune. He looked at me over the pad. Okay, now tell me about your husband. So I told her about Leo and all the strange questions he'd been asking for months. She listened, her focus unshakable. So, you think your husband, Leo, found out about your father's estate and decided to throw you out before you could inherit it? She said it so matter-of-factly. I guess that's what I'm saying, I whispered. It's not a guess, she corrected me. It's a motive, and if we can prove that, this is no longer a simple divorce. She leaned forward. You need to find a probate attorney who deals with complex estates. You must find out if your father, Richard Vance, left a will or a trust that names you. Don't ask anyone directly. A good probate lawyer will know how to check. I nodded, starting my todo list. And Maya, I need you to save everything. Every single text message, every email. Download bank statements, investment reports, anything you can get your hands on. Screenshot everything and send it to a new email account. Leo doesn't know about did I have one. I did an old one from college. That is your new life, she said, starting right now. I left her office an hour later with a battle plan, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. I had a mission. The Boston wind coming off the harbour was sharp, the kind of cold that jolts you awake. I found a little cafe and got right to work. I sent the screenshots to my private email. I wrote down the details of the wire transfers. I called the bank's fraud department, reported the withdrawals as unauthorized, and demanded they freeze the account, using the exact legal words Ms. Elbright gave me. Next, I had to find my father's family. I remembered he had a son, my half-brother Ethan. I found him on a business networking site. Same last name, same sharp jawline as my father, only younger. I sent a message explaining that I was Maya, Richard S.'s daughter, and needed to ask about his estate for a pressing legal issue. I admitted how bizarre it must sound. He replied within an hour with just a phone number. His voice was guarded. Maya, our father passed away 2 months ago. Aneurysm. He was only 61. He paused. His estate lawyers have been trying to reach you for weeks. Why are you only calling me now? I told him my entire world had just collapsed. He never really settled down, he said, his voice softening. He always talked about you, you know, right up until the end. He said you were his greatest design. There was another long silence. His attorney's name is Mr. Harrison. He's based in Denver. Maya, you really need to call that man. I sat in that loud cafe long after we hung up. My father was gone. He'd been gone all this time, and his lawyers were looking for me. And in a flash, it all became horribly clear. Leo's weird questions about the hotel business, the vicious fight he started from nothing. The money vanishing the instant it was gone. Leo didn't just have a hunch. Leo knew. He'd found out my father died, probably from an industry newsletter or a public notice. Been waiting, planning this entire ambush. The moment I told him I was pregnant, which made a simple divorce impossible, he lit the match. That was the thing that truly broke my heart. Not the affair, not being thrown out. It was knowing my husband had been carefully plotting my destruction for an inheritance. I didn't even know I had. I found Mr. Harrison's law firm in Denver and made the call. His assistant put me on hold. When he picked up, his voice was formal, but you could hear the relief. Miss Vance, he said. I am incredibly glad you called. We have an urgent matter regarding the estate of Richard Vance. You are the primary beneficiary. Oh, primary? I asked. My voice was just a whisper. The estate is currently valued at $92 million, he said. But there is a very specific condition you have to meet. 92 million. I just stared into my now cold tea, watching a lemon slice bob on the surface. The whole world just stopped moving. Mr. Harrison explained the clause. My father had put his money in a trust to inherit. I had to personally go to his flagship hotel in Denver within 90 days to identify a certain architectural detail and prove I was really me. Mr. Harrison explained. My father had always been a private and eccentric man. He put that clause in his will for that exact reason, to stop anyone but me from being able to make a claim. He knew I was the only one who would know the detail he was thinking of. He updated the trust about 18 months ago, Mr. Harrison said. You were always in it, but this final version added a lot of value after he sold off his older properties. Was this trust a matter of public record? I asked. There was a short pause. The existence of the trust would become discoverable through filings in probate court. Contents weren't public, but someone with enough resources and drive could have found out it existed. Mr. Harrison paused. Is there a specific reason you're asking? Yes, I said, there is. I told him everything about Leo, the timing of our fight, the money that vanished from our joint accounts, the night he threw me out. Mr. Harrison listened without a single interruption. When I was done, he said, Ms. Vance, your lawyer needs to file immediately to have any inheritance designated as separate, non-marital property. Given your current marital status, this is absolutely critical. No, I told him my lawyer and I went over that this morning. Excellent, he said. I flew to Denver just a few days later, back in Boston, Mass. Albright had already won an emergency freeze on our assets. She also had Leo served, forcing him to let me back into the house to get my things. A police officer met me at the door. Leo was there. He just stood in the doorway to his study, watching me pack up my life into boxes, with a cold, blank stare I'd never seen on his face before. His mother, Beatrice, sat on the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap, tracking my every move. Beatrice Vance was 73, impossibly elegant, with her silver hair in a flawless bun. She had the calm smile of a person who uses politeness as a weapon. She had never wanted Leo to marry me. I knew it from the day we met, even though she never said it. It was always in the little digs. The way she'd ask about my little building projects with a hint of amusement. The way she always, without fail, took Leo's side in any argument. I had long suspected she was the real force behind his ambition. Leo wasn't an idiot, but he needed a woman to tell him what to want. Beatrice had been doing that for him his entire life. As I carried the last box out the door, she finally spoke. Making a terrible mistake, Maya, she said, her voice as soft as velvet, but just as heavy. I just shifted the box onto my shoulder and walked out without a word. I signed the documents in a Denver high-rise the very next to Status. My father S., estate lawyer, had an office with a sweeping view of the Rocky Mountains. His paralegal offered me water, with the kind of gentle pity people save for the suddenly rich. The whole thing took hours, verifications, signatures, legal reviews. The lawyer went through every last clause. The money would come in trusts, starting with a first transfer of $9 million the following week. I made it back to Seattle by Thursday night. An unknown number called. I ignored it. The voicemail was a man with a smooth, friendly voice. "Ella, this is a friend of Liam's. Just some friendly advice. For an architect, a reputation is everything. It would be a real shame if yours got complicated during all this." The threat was crystal clear. You need to ask yourself if this divorce is really worth your entire career. I was in my friend Chloe's spare room, just staring at the phone, absolutely stunned by his arrogance. Saved the voicemail and immediately called my lawyer, Ims Albright. Her reaction confirmed everything I was thinking. It was a veiled threat, sure, but it was from my husband during a divorce, a clumsy, arrogant move. He'd a blocked number, but the call was logged on my phone. Mrs. Albright filed an intimidation motion that afternoon. The very next morning, Liam's lawyer was on the phone, suddenly eager for an amicable chat. I could hear the smile in Mrs. Albright's voice when she called me. "They assumed you'd be frightened and alone," she said. "They never expected you to have a powerhouse lawyer on retainer." "I know," I told her. "They'll just find another way to attack." Her advice was simple. Take the next few days for yourself. Rest. Eat. Well, you'll need your strength, so I did. For 3 days, I just existed. I walked for hours along the water, ate clam chowder from a little stand near Chloe's apartment, and just let my body focus on the tiny life growing inside me. My first ultrasound, scheduled with the new insurance my lawyer secured, was on Friday. Strong, galloping heartbeat. The doctor said everything was perfect. Afterward, I just sat in my car in the parking garage, feeling a wave of relief so intense it almost hurt. It was the first time in weeks I could actually breathe. It didn't last, of course. Their next move came that Tuesdays. Liam's lawyer sent an email proposing mediation, but buried inside was the real offer. Liam would agree to a fast divorce and release our frozen accounts. He'd even waive any claim on my family's coffee business. All I had to do was withdraw my motion. I also had to accept a pathetic slice of our marital assets and sign an in-day so restrictive it felt like a gag order. I read the whole thing twice before calling my lawyer. "He's buying your silence," she said, without missing a beat. "The INDA is the tell. This isn't about the divorce settlement, it's about what you know. About him investigating my father's company before he even threw me out of our home," I said. "Exactly. That's a calculated financial scheme. If that gets out, his reputation as a venture capitalist is toast. His whole career in tech investing is built on a foundation of trust," she explained. "Frankly, Ella, this settlement offer is an insult. Given the length of your marriage and his actions, what you're owed is substantially more. So we refuse," I said. "We refuse," she agreed, "and we don't counter. That sends a clear message. You're not after a quick payout, you're after what's right." And that was our decision. I won't lie, for a moment I was tempted. Part of me pregnant, bone-tired, crashing on a friend's couch, wanted to just take it and escape. I let myself entertain the idea for a little while. Sat on Chloe's sofa, sipping mint tea as rain streamed down the windows. But I pushed the thought away. That settlement wasn't for my future. It was to protect Liam's. And I had a gut feeling it was just as much about protecting his mother, Eleanor. Someone had to do the detailed research into my family's business. Liam was a predator, always focused on the big kill, not the tedious legwork. Digging into his own wife's inheritance behind her back. That needed someone he trusted implicitly, someone patient, motivated, and utterly ruthless. I remembered his mother watching me pack that day, her eyes cold and unblinking. On a whim, I grabbed an old tablet Liam left behind.
When I turned it on, his email account started syncing.
And then I saw it emails with a wealth management firm outlining a discreet valuation of my family's company. The final report came in weeks before my dad's funeral, and the invoice, paid from an account I knew belonged to Eleanor. It was the smoking gun. Chloe's been my best friend since we met in a college design class. She's brilliant, hilarious, and shows her loyalty through actions, not just words. The day Liam kicked me out, she just gave me a key to her place and said, "Stay as long as you need." That night, she came home from work to find me buried in legal papers at her kitchen table. Without a word, she started making risotto, poured me some water and herself a glass of wine, sat down and said, "Okay, tell me everything." So I did. The inheritance, the threatening call, the settlement, and the proof ID just found. We listened to the whole ugly story without saying a word. When I was done, she took a slow bite of risotto. "So, his mother knew the value of your family's business before he even kicked you out." I nodded. The whole plan was to divorce you before the inheritance was finalised, so he could claim his share. But your dad's will was ironclad and left it all to you. Their big plan was worthless from the start. I know. I think they miscalculated badly. They had no idea what the company was really worth. So they panicked. Chloe finished. "Yeah, I think they did." "When I found out I was pregnant," I said, which completely blew up their plan, and Liam panicked. Chloe took a sip of her wine. "So what's next? What do you need?" "I might need you to testify for me," I told her, "to confirm my emotional state the date I arrived. What I told you. It's all crucial for my case." "Done," she said instantly. I was so grateful I couldn't even speak. Outside, the rain had stopped. Seattle gets this soft golden light after a storm, like a little bit of peace for people who are worn down to the bone. "Thank you," I finally managed to say. I waved it away. "Don't thank me yet." Across town, Liam and his mother are plotting. I could feel them watching me. I knew the next move wouldn't be from a lawyer. I was right. It came on a Sunday, and it was just Eleanor. She called Chloe for a number. I know I never gave her. Liam must have found it. She called around 10 a.m, asking if she could possibly stop by. The word was so out of character, so calculated. I took a breath and I said yes, because saying no was just a defense. Saying yes was a strategy. She showed up at 11, carrying a box of macarons from some absurdly fancy bakery. The performance was flawless, the concerned mother-in-law. It was almost funny. She sat on the sofa, refused a glass of water, and her eyes darted around the apartment, judging everything. "I want to say how sorry I am," she started, "for how Liam has handled this. I just sat there, waiting. He's just been under so much pressure at work," she went on. "And the baby news, he just didn't react well. He feels terrible about it, truly." She folded her perfect hands in her lap. "This is a terrible mistake. You and Liam have 7 years, a baby on the way." The words just hung there. A child needs 2 parents, a stable family. Think about what a nasty divorce will do to this baby. And there it was, the veiled threat. "And my family's inheritance," I added. I saw her eyes harden. "That is a family issue," she said, her voice like glass. "It has no bearing on this." I looked right at her. Eleanor, who impersonated me on a call to my wealth manager last month, and her perfect mask finally cracked. The smile faltered for a second, then snapped back into place. "I don't know what you mean, oh, I think you do." Genevieve straightened her spine, the perfect image of a worried matriarch, Ella. "Darling, as the grandmother of this baby, am begging you, don't throw this all away. Liam is heartbroken. He's agreed to counselling. He wants to earn back your love. He just needs you to help him put this unfortunate business behind him. The gossip is damaging his startup. He needs me to withdraw the restraining order, I said, my voice empty, and to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He wants to save his family, she insisted. I just looked at her, 70 years old, with expertly coiffed white hair, and a box of ridiculously expensive chocolates on my coffee table. The woman believed that politeness was a shield and patience was a sword. The best strategy was always to make the other person look crazy. Genevieve, I said, I know about the startup's debt. I know you researched my grandmother's entire literary estate, and I know you called her agent. My lawyer knows all of it too. A judge has already frozen the inheritance money. Liam tried to transfer to his company account. I stood up. Tell Liam the answer is no. The answer was always no. And if you or anyone in your family contacts my sister or my Obgyn again, I'll have security at their door by Friday. Genevieve's perfectly pleasant smile didn't just fade, it was erased. It's like a mask had just dropped. Her face was suddenly cold and hard as granite. You're making a very powerful enemy, Ella, she said quietly. I've already got one, I told her. I'd just like to be clear on who I'm fighting. She stood, took her box of chocolates, and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she looked back. This is not a threat, she said, her voice like ice. It's just a simple fact. You have no idea what you've started. Then she was gone. Standing in my friend Sophie's apartment, my hand started to shake. It wasn't just being scared. It's the bill your nerves send you after you've been faking courage. It's the moment when the adrenaline crash lands and the real fear shows up. I was terrified. Absolutely. Completely petrified. Genevieve Sterling wasn't one for empty promises. She had the connections, the money, and a lifetime of practice in psychological warfare. She's the one who raised Liam, after all. She knows exactly where a person's weak spots are and how to push. But another feeling was creeping in, too. The fear wasn't making me want to run. It was making me want to fight even harder. It made me think of something my novelist grandmother always said. Ella, a good story never falls apart because of a plot twist. It falls apart because a character's motivation is a lie. Talking about fiction, of course. But I finally got it. My motivation was stronger than Liam or his mother could possibly comprehend. I called my lawyer, Mins Albright, and told her Genevieve had stopped by. ID recorded our entire conversation on my phone. The call had come through a service that announces it's being recorded. A mess. Albright listened to it and said just one word perfect. My next call was to the estate manager. He confirmed the first disbursement from my grandmother's. Trust was secure and untouched. I opened the notebook where ID documented everything and wrote a new title, They're Getting Desperate, Use It. I drew a box around it. The deposition was set for a Monday in June. A month earlier, Emma's Albright had filed a huge discovery request. We wanted bank statements, emails, text messages, everything from the last 3 years. Liam's lawyers fought us on almost every single point, and the judge shot down almost all their objections. The data trail laid out the entire story of his betrayal, which didn't surprise me at all. Liam's first search for my grandmother's name, Eleanor Vance, was from last July. The search history was on our shared laptop. His legal team tried and failed to get it thrown out. He'd looked into the value of her book rights, potential movie deals, and the exact San Francisco law firm that handled her estate. Genevieve's phone records, which my lawyer fought for over 2 intense weeks, showed a call to my grandmother's literary agent in February. That was the call the agent had told me about. The records also revealed 8 calls between Genevieve and Liam in the 2 days right before our big fight. And then we got the smoking gun, a text message from Liam to his sister. He wrote that he needed the Ella situation resolved before the first inheritance payment cleared. He sent that text the day before he blew up our marriage. He knew all along. The whole fight was an act. We were in Ms. Albright's conference room for the deposition, the same room where Shed told me to check my husband's accounts months earlier. Everything had changed. Liam sat across the table from me for the first time since that terrible night. He wore a grey suit and looked stiff and rehearsed, like an actor wooed over-prepared for a tiny role. The first 30 minutes were just routine questions. Liam kept giving his practiced answers, saying, "I can't recall so often. It became a nervous tick then." Albright brought up the text message, it up on the big screen in the room, and let the words just sit there. It was brilliant. Liam looked up. I saw his jaw clench, just for a second. But after 6 years together, I knew all his tells. "Mr. Sterling, do you recognize this text message? It seems to be from your phone. Did you send this?" "I may have. It says you needed the Ella situation resolved. Could you explain to us what that situation was?" His lawyer jumped in immediately. Ms. Albright ignored him. "Mr. Sterling, before March 5th, were you aware your wife was the primary beneficiary of the Eleanor Vance estate?" The quiet in that room felt like it lasted a year. "At a yes or no, Mr. Sterling?" Liam's lawyer, some slick guy from his father's firm, put a hand on his shoulder. Liam was frozen. "My client declines to answer." Mrs. Albright cut him off. "On what grounds?" He already testified his startup was bankrupt. She was razor sharp. The refusal is on the record. Liam gave his lawyer a panicked look. In that single glance, I watched his whole charade just fall apart. It wasn't a loud crash. It was a silent demolition. A story when you pull out the one lie, holding it all together. First a small crack, then the whole thing shatters. He finally looked at me, searching my eyes for something. I always wondered how I would feel right then. Vindicated, angry, some awful combination of both. But I just felt perfectly calm. The kind of calm a chef feels when she trusts her recipe, when she knows the ingredients will hold. I met his stare and didn't flinch. He was the one who broke contact first. In the elevator, Ms. Albright said, "He's going to settle. This will be done in a week." "I know," I said. The doors opened to a bright, clear August afternoon, the kind of day that made San Francisco feel perfect. Albright looked at me. "How are you really, Ella?" I actually had to take a second to consider it. My feet were killing me and I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home. But for the first time in what felt like forever, a new feeling was taking hold. The terror was gone. "I'm okay," I said. "I think I'm really genuinely okay." Liam settled 3 days later. He had no other choice. The agreement was 20 pages long. He renounced any claim to my inheritance, admitting it was my sole property, and repaid the $200,000 he'd taken. I got the condo and our savings. As for that non-disclosure agreement he wanted, absolutely not. I refused to sign away my right to speak. A prenatal paternity test at 15 weeks had already confirmed. Liam was the father. That one simple fact was now a permanent part of the court record. It was the ultimate proof that his entire story had been a lie. I hope he read that part twice. The first settlement payment hit my account on a Friday. I was at my friend Sophie's place when the alert appeared on my phone. I just stared at the number, forgetting how to breathe. I texted her it's done. Her reply came back immediately. Just a party popper emoji and my name Ella. I called my grandmother's longtime agent and said, "We did it." Silent for a second. "Your grandmother would be so immensely proud of you." "Ella," he told me. "She really would be." Liam signed the final divorce papers on a Wednesday. He never looked at me. Not once. Our marriage was over. Driving home over the Golden Gate Bridge, my daughter kicked me for the first time. A quick, sudden little jab, like a secret message. "I'm here." It felt like she was saying, in a language only mothers understand. "I know," I thought, putting a hand on my belly. "Me too." Her name is Chloe. She was born on a Tuesday in November, 7 pounds and 2 ounces, with her father's dark, serious eyes, and what my sister calls my stubborn chin. I have a beautiful apartment now, in a quiet part of San Francisco. It gets way more sun than our old condo, with a huge kitchen where I'm building my new venture. My catering company already has 3 big events on the books. My name is on the business license. That means more to me than I can possibly describe. My grandmother's trust fund gave me the chance to rebuild my life, and I'm so thankful for that. But I've worked hard to make it my own. I still test every new recipe for days. I still talk to my sister every Saturday. Liam's tech startup went under a month after our divorce was final. He sold the intellectual property for almost nothing. He sees our daughter, Chloe, every other weekend, and we keep things civil. Hez her father. No matter what he did, that one fact will never change. Now the anger is still there, a burning coal in my gut. I try to separate the man I married from the betrayal, and most days I can't. I haven't spoken to his sister Olivia since I found out she knew all about my supposed best friend Chloe. The whole time, that part of my life is finished. My real best friend Mia got married last summer. I stood there as maid of honor, holding my daughter, Lily, who's creamed through the entire thing. Mia swears, though she's going to frame the audio. My grandma's old colleague, Mr. Davies, visited. He brought her old photo negatives, a box it'd never seen. She always said the real story lives in the negative, Mr. Davies told me, his voice a little shaky. Weeks after that, it'd just stare at one of those negatives against a bright window. "I know, Grandma," it'd think, "I'm trying." I still sit on my porch and see it all again, a warm evening in July. The launch party for Marcus' new restaurant. Then that one horrible moment when the waiter handed me the menu and I saw it right at the top of the cocktail list, the Chloe. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was the ground falling out from under me. But the foundation I had built for myself somehow held. When Lily is older, I'll tell her everything. Not as a sad story, but as a lesson in the dark room. This, my love, is how you bring the truth into the light. There's one thing I've learned from this entire disaster. It's this: people who try to make you small are always making a bet. They're betting against you, finding your own strength. My ex-husband Marcus gambled that I was too in love with our lifestyle to ever walk away. His sister Olivia gambled that I'd be too humiliated to ever speak up. They both lost badly. So listen to your gut. Document everything. Find your own Mia, your real tribe, and don't ever let anyone else hold the pen to your life story. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, I promise. And if you think this could help someone, please share it. Thanks for being here.